Drakengard opens up with the protagonist Kaim jobbing it out to some faceless grunt. The continent of Midgard is at war with the Union, which Kaim is a part of, and the Empire with their cult of the Watchers at each other's throats. And by Midgard, it's just fantasy Europe. This shit is an upside down map. But bro, Kaim is insanely tough. He gets his back slashed wide open and he's still good to go full sprint towards the castle and kill a couple dozen guys on the way. In the castle, Kaim meets a red dragon who too is all fucked up. Kaim has a vendetta against all dragons since he watched his parents get killed by one. And the dragon hates Kaim because she's just racist. Dragons just be like that. But rather than kill each other, they decide to make a pact together, which is the only way for both of them to live. It's never really stated what exactly a pact is in this game outside of what a pact does. It grants both pact partners greater strength than they had before, the human especially, but the human side of the pact must sacrifice something for the pact. In Kaim's case, he becomes mute. The sacrifice can range from your eyesight, to your ability for song, to your hair, which seems like a pretty generous deal compared to the shit that other people had to give up. If one of the pact partners die, they both do, so it can be pretty risky. Anyway, before the two have some painful looking soul sex, no really, that's how this thing is presented. You're thrown into Drakengard's many ground missions. And man, ground missions suck dick. Thank you to my supporters. If you liked the video, consider subscribing, or even joining the Patreon, link on screen and in the description. If you do, you'll be thanked in the videos, be able to watch each video a week early, as well as gain access to bonus videos. If you've ever played a Warriors game before, picture that, but unrefined and way clunkier. That's the ground mission experience right there. It's fucking bad. Kaim's got no sauce to him between his stiff-feeling movements and awkward sword swinging. Swinging your weapon is one of the most common actions you're going to be doing as Kaim, and it is unsatisfying, which I think one of the main reasons for this is the game's implementation of vibration. Almost every action causes the controller to vibrate. Getting hit? Vibrate. Magic attack? Vibrate. Finishing blow? Vibrate. Fucking walking around. Are you seriously telling me that each and every step causes the controller to fucking vibrate? It sure does. To give you an idea of the frequency of this shit, if you slightly tilt the camera as you run, the camera will bounce at the same frequency of the vibration. It's constant throughout this entire game. And yet, the one action that doesn't cause the controller to vibrate? Attacking. The one fucking action you'd expect to have a tactile response, and there's nothing. The lack of a physical response makes your weapon feel bad given there's less feedback from that compared to something as simple as walking. I just don't get it. I find it pretty difficult to think of a more repetitive action game than this. You can mash square to attack, which is pretty standard for this type of game. But you know how in a Warriors game you can press your heavy attack to vary up your combo? Like how you can press it at different points for different purposes such as a launcher or for crowd control. That's not really a thing in Drakengard. Whenever Kaim flashes mid-combo, you're able to press triangle for a finishing blow. These are the only times you can do this. If this flash only happens after your first swing, you could only do your finishing blow after that first swing. And it is always the same attack depending on the weapon. More often than not, a shockwave around Kaim. Not even given a whiff of variety there either. Regardless, it doesn't matter the weapon you're using, you're going to be pressing the same exact button sequence over and fucking over. Take Kaim's default sword for example. After his first swing, you're able to use your finishing blow. So this results in hours and hours of doing nothing but pressing square, triangle, finishing blow. Square, triangle, finishing blow. Square, triangle, finishing blow. It's mind-numbing. And every weapon plays the exact same way, with the only difference being how fast the animations are and when you're allowed to press triangle. And the cherry on top of all this? The camera's straight fucking garbage. Your control over the camera is very limited, and the control you are given over it is practically worthless to the point that the right stick, where the camera is relegated to, is used way more as a menu button than an actual camera. The camera locks its position in 3D space while Kaim is moving with little influence from how he's moving. The camera only ever moves when Kaim stops moving, where it recenters on the direction that Kaim is facing. So if you wanted to see, let's say, the group of dudes rushing your ass coming from the camera's direction, you have to stop and become a vulnerable target in order for the camera to pan around to Kaim's back and actually see what's happening. If you wanted to recenter the camera faster, then guarding is what you're looking for. Issue is that guarding doesn't snap your camera to where Kaim is facing. It snaps to the closest enemy whether they are alive, in their dying animation, or even in the opposite direction that you are facing. What the hell is the point of locking on to a dead enemy? Why am I allowed to do that? Using your guard can sometimes work to readjust the camera, but it can be a coin flip over whether or not it could fuck you over instead and leave you a bit pissed off with the camera snapping elsewhere instead. So then, what kind of manual camera control do you even have? The right stick doesn't move the camera around in 3D space like how it would in most games. What it instead does is rotate the camera in its current positioning. This isn't useful, like ever. In fact, doing it can be disorienting because Kaim's movement is in reference to the camera's position, not its rotation. So you could be pressing forward on the left stick, but Kaim will start walking towards the right of the screen. It's fucking weird. Fortunately, you're not completely grounded in these grounded missions. Whenever you've got the space, you can press select to select playing as the dragon. I'd generally recommend doing this whenever possible, as flying around, raining down hellfire makes the ground missions you're in way faster and a lot easier. There are some missions where you're not allowed to use her though. Can't fly indoors, and a little bit of fog or some fucking trees are her Achilles' heel. But outside of some bullshit terrain excuses, the game will throw out ranged enemy units scattered throughout the map. Both magicians and archers, you'll mostly encounter archers, are some aggressive dickheads. I'm just trying to fly here and some arrows get machine gunned in my direction. Now, I know they're smurfing when playing as Kaim because these fuckers take their time shooting him when they're able to ground a dragon in 2 seconds flat. But if you're sick with it, you can avoid becoming a winged pincushion in the archer airspace and come out relatively unscathed during your dragon drive-bys. Despite having to deal with archers and magic-resistant enemies, which can be very annoying, the dragon still remains the only way to keep sane in these larger and more open maps. I can be more forgiving towards a game and if playing it fucking sucks if it has other things going on for it, such as if the game is nice to look at or has music I like listening to. I would not describe Drakengard in this way. Aesthetically, Drakengard is very muted. Browns and grays are what you're going to be looking at the most here. Most interiors and even the majority of exteriors are pretty gray and dull. Menus are brown. Enemies are largely gray, sometimes brown. How the hell do you manage to make a forest or the fucking ocean look so gray? How? There is some color. The palette shifts more red towards the end of the game, but when that happens, it's mostly entirely red and gray. Even when there's some visual stimulation, it doesn't continue to vary it up, causing even the deep red to become stale itself. And the music is abrasive as hell. So what the music team did was take recordings of classical music and chop and screw it to make music that makes for a really rough listen. Calling it a disorganized mess feels pretty generous to a lot of the tracks. It's incredibly jarring and more often than not, pretty dissonant. And a lot of the way these samples are cut makes me think there's something wrong with my game disc with the way it sounds like it's skipping. Not just the music side of the sound department, but a lot of vocal performances are extremely bizarre.
Die, 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 die.
Inuart especially has a lot of fucking abnormal line reads. Have a sampling for yourself.
Die, die, die!
I don't know how anyone can play through this and stay sane. I don't know how I did. Drakengard is not a particularly fun time. It's awkward to play and can often be infuriating, especially in the later ground missions. It's genuinely surprising that Yoko Taro was given more chances by Square Enix after this. Even more surprising is how more Drakengard games got made after this. It just feels bad to play, and I struggle to recommend anyone actually play this. Fortunately, you're not completely grounded in these grounded missions. Whenever you've got the space, you can press select to select playing as the dragon. I'd generally recommend doing this whenever possible, as flying around, raining down hellfire makes the ground missions you're in way faster and a lot easier. It's way more satisfying and fun playing as the dragon than it is playing as Kaim. It's a good thing that the ground missions are often broken up by the aerial missions. Whereas the ground missions can be quite the slog, the aerial missions are genuinely fun. In these sections, you play as the dragon with Kaim riding shotgun on her. The aerial half of the game is just a dragon-themed ace combat, and I'm all for it. The dragon moves forward on her own and is mostly controlled with traditional flight controls. The left stick's for the pitch and yaw, the X, L1, and R1 buttons are used for dodging and dashing in their respective directions, but if you press both L1 and R1 at once you get a quick turn. The dragon, believe it or not, is weighty yet responsive. It controls surprisingly well and you've got pretty good aerial movement and control. It feels good to adjust your positioning, dodge attacks, and track and attack your targets. And if you're sick with it, like I am, you'll eventually learn the pattern of optimal dodging, which you can get really good at avoiding taking hits. For reference, because each dodge is on a brief cooldown, you run the sequence of X, L1, X, R1. It's a simple sequence, but it's really fun to execute, especially in conjunction to every other action you're also trying to do, and it makes you feel nice with it when you're dodging medieval Danmaku. You've also got a really useful button on R2, where the dragon will automatically turn towards the enemy, which can be used alongside the left stick to track the enemy really easily. And this has some sick tech where you dash in a different direction, hold R2, then you're able to drift the dragon for a little bit, allowing you to move away from your target while being able to face and shoot at it. You got 3 types of attacks with the dragon. Starting with the magic attack, press triangle for an effective screen clear akin to a shmup bomb. The magic attack is also the funniest shit in this game, because every single time you press it, it plays the loudest, bassiest fucking boom ever. It's pretty intense the first time you press it and aren't expecting it. My friend was playing this game on an emulator and he asked me after pressing it if that sound was intended or if the emulator was fucked up, and I reassured him that this sound was the intended experience. It almost feels like a shitpost and I love this. The other 2 attacks are fireballs attached to square. You either get a single shot if you tap it or homing attacks if you hold it instead. The homing attacks are useful for small fry enemies, like fucking cubes that gang up on you in packs and are generally one tap. Because it's a lot easier to use, I tend to use the homing shot more when I started playing this game. It was nice to not have to worry about aiming while I was getting used to the way the dragon felt and moved, especially in the more hectic dogfights. But as I got used to the way the dragon felt, the game hit me with some boss fights where the homing attack straight up would not cut it. In the case of the Inuart fights, the black dragon would often dodge out the way, and even if it wouldn't land a hit, it did fuck all for damage. And in the case of the worm fight, the worm is surrounded by little fellas, so even if you tried to lock onto the worm, those little fellas would eat up those lock-ons first. So the game presents a really interesting skill escalation with the dragon where it says, okay, you've gotten used to the movement, now learn to aim. And when you do, it feels really satisfying to nail enemies with the slower, not tracking big-ass fireball. It does good damage, stuns bosses, and it always feels nice to land a skill-based shot. If it's not obvious, I really like the aerial missions of Drakengard. They're fast-paced, hectic, and really fun to fly around and dogfight as a dragon. It's sick as fuck. If this game was exclusively just a dragon version of Ace Combat, drop the ground missions entirely and focus on the aerial stuff, this game would probably have been praised a lot more. So every time you boot up the game, you're presented with the logo for Project Dragonsphere, the name that Drakengard was developed under. If you've ever wondered why it was called that, that was likely in reference to Ace Combat 3, Electrosphere. I've been comparing the aerial sections of Drakengard to Ace Combat directly because one of Drakengard's producers, Takuya Iwasaki, was a director for Ace Combat 3. The reason why the ground combat was even added is because when Drakengard was being pitched as Dragon Ace Combat, it was a Square Enix producer that asked for something like Dynasty Warriors 2 because it was popular. What a bad fucking request to make all to chase a trend. Just let the guy who made the good flying game make another flying game like he wanted to. Much like the flying gameplay, something I don't think gets the praise it deserves is the soundtrack. While it's not the kind of thing I'd casually listen to, there's no denying that the OST is unique, memorable, and it 100% fits the tone of this game. The decision to take classical music, chop and screw with it to make something that genuinely sounds like the score to an apocalypse is an inspired one and takes a lot of creative skill to achieve that effect. The maddening, disjointed, fucked up nature of the music legitimately adds to a lot of the game's tone. The music fits the narrative well as Drakengard ends up taking an apocalyptic path with its story, and the music captures such a feeling of hellishness like no other. And while I wouldn't put most of the music in this game on my casual listening playlist, believe it or not, there actually is some music that is on there and I love. Ending D's credits theme is some of the most existentially somber sounding songs that I know, and it just sounds really cool. The lonely sounding bell ringing and the mechanical sounds underneath it are just cool as hell to me. I fuck with it pretty hard. But the 2 tracks that are my favorite songs in this game go to Growing Wings and Exhausted. For reference, they're basically the same song, but Growing Wings is sung in English, while Exhausted is sung in Japanese. The instrumentals, while still abrasive, can come off sonically confusing with it bouncing between the left and right earphones, are downright beautiful. I don't know, man, maybe I Stockholmed myself into loving this song or some shit like that, but I do love this song. And a lot of that has to do with the vocal performances. Growing Wings has these soft vocals which creates a really nice contrast with the more abrasive instrumentals, and I really like the asynchronous lines that are sung while the main lyrics are being sung. And Exhausted, man. This woman actually sounds exhausted as hell in her delivery. She not only sounds physically tired, but also exhausted with living. She sounds like she wants to die in this song, and it's an amazing performance of that feeling. I listened to Growing Wings first between the two, so that one has the soft spot in my heart, though I do still really like Exhausted, and will concede that Exhausted's lyrics are more narratively fitting than that of Growing Wings. Both of these songs are from the perspective of Fudii, who is Kaim's sister, Inuart's betrothed, and is also the goddess of the seal all in one. Being the goddess of the seal is a rough fucking deal. It's not quite explained in the game, more so in other works, but being the goddess is life-altering. You're not allowed to live a normal life. No more marriage, no children, you are to live a sheltered and dangerous life, all the while burdened by immense pain and stress in order to keep the world from falling apart. So this is why the credits for ending B is Growing Wings or Exhausted, as this ending focuses a bit more on characterizing Fudii as these songs are from her perspective, and you end up learning a bit too much about her in this game. Drakengard deals with a lot of taboo topics. Topics that I'm surprised were even allowed to be put in this game to begin with and had to be toned down for its English release. Let's put a pin in Fudii real quick, and talk about some of the other characters before I get into the more nuanced ones, starting with Arioch. In Kaim's journey to stop the Empire from breaking all the seals, plunging the world into hell, he comes across other people who have made pacts that join his party. You can actually use them in the ground battles for a limited time. They tend to have really good magic, Arioch having some cracked magic that airstrikes everything around her. It's really good for some maps. But in order, Kaim is joined by Leonard, Arioch, and Seere, with Vertile as a non-playable companion. If you're familiar with demonology, you might notice a common theme that the hero party is named after fucking demons. That's because most of the characters in this game are not good people. Arioch especially. Her deal is that she just eats children. Like, that's just her thing. She's fucking nuts, and maybe a little bit too baby-crazed.
A pity. They're so sweet.
Kaim is a bloodthirsty psychopath. He a very angry boy. He regularly abuses those around him, has no issue slaughtering children, and the entire game is literally about him going on a warpath. Drakengard was conceived when Yoko Taro was playing other games where you'd kill like 100 guys and the game would be like, sick, you did it. But Yoko Taro thought about that and was like, but that just make you a serial killer. So Kaim was kind of born out of that. That someone who kills that amount of people couldn't possibly be a good person. Though I will say that the UI kind of betrays that thematic element because it keeps track of your combo and your kills, and it does glow when you reach a certain kill numbers. As if it's a non-verbal congratulations on your slaughter thus far on the game's part. Vertile is a coward with nothing but bitch in his heart, which, fair, he sees some freak shit in this game. I don't think I'd fare any better, honestly. And Seere is probably the only good person in this game. He's just a kid trying his best to help the world and also look for his sister. And then there's Leonard. Leonard is a very interesting character for sure. Okay, so Leonard is sexually attracted to young boys. This is played pretty subtly, especially in the English release. When you first find him about to stick a knife in his throat after being unable to stop his brothers from being killed, it's never said in the game, but it turns out he was in the woods jacking it. There's also a line between him and Seere that gets deeply uncomfortable when you know.
Seere, you are a fine young lad.
The worst part is, in Japanese, Leonard says something along the lines of Seere smelling nice. Man, that's bad. So Leonard is a sexual deviant, to put it lightly. The dude is fucked up. But what makes it interesting to me is that he knows he's fucked up and he hates it and hates himself for it. The reason why he was a recluse in the forest to begin with was to punish himself and to separate from society. And despite Leonard despising war, he goes along with Kaim for two reasons. The first is that he feels he might be able to make the world a better place, to atone for his sins. The second is that following him might end up getting himself killed. Yet another way to punish himself. Leonard could have been another Arioch situation and the game could have had another, wow, look at him, isn't that fucked up? But a more interesting route was instead chosen with how his character is written. And that's not the only sexual deviance in this game. We could take the pin out of VIII now because her shtick is wanting to fuck her brother. European royalty, know what I'm saying? It's hinted at here and there through the game.
The goddess, her feelings for you are special.
And this is the reason why she ends up killing herself, as Kaim finds out about her feelings towards him and just hits her with disgust. One of the few times Kaim shows any emotion outside of rage. I get why Kaim is like this, but it is very concerning how Kaim is willing to work with predators and be less bothered by that than by VIII's fetish. The character of VIII is explored in the lyrics of Growing Wings and Exhausted. They tell of VIII's desire to go back to when they were kids and she could play with Kaim. They also tell of her desire to see him and, made more obvious in Exhausted, the love she secretly has for him. The writing as a whole in Drakengard is really strong, not just the characters and their personal stories, but also what happens in the narrative as well. For most of the story, it's Kaim trying to stop all the seals around the world, including his sister, from being destroyed by the Empire and the Cult of the Watchers. That takes up about 3/4 of the story, but then the last quarter takes an extreme turn into something horrifying and alien. When Mana, the priestess of the Cult of the Watchers and Seere's sister, is killed, the Watchers descend and holy shit is it fucking weird. They're these strange flying stone babies. It's straight up freakish. It's one of the most insane final acts to a game that I've played. Drakengard is insanely unique. I can't think of any other games that goes in a similar direction to this other than other Yoko Taro games. I think it is worth playing through this game. Believe it or not, this is actually my second time 100%ing this game. You shouldn't do that though. Going into Drakengard, I'd heard from several places that this game is not fun to play. And while they are right at points, the ground sections can be annoying, I think that those are over-exaggerations. Despite the negative impressions prior to starting the game, I was still able to enjoy my time overall with this game. And while I wouldn't put most of the music in this game on my casual listening playlist, believe it or not, there actually is some music that is on there and I love. Ending D's credits theme is some of the most existentially somber sounding songs that I know, and it just sounds really cool. But how do you actually get to see Ending D? Drakengard has 5 endings to it. They're alternate endings with no canonical one. And just because there's 5 endings, this doesn't mean you have to play the game 5 times. Not at all, that'd be absurd. The endings are got linearly. For example, you get ending A for finishing Chapter 8, after which you get prompted that there are more endings in the game and you now have access to Chapter 9. Ending A through D follows this structure, but not ending E. For ending E, you have to collect all 65 weapons in this game. 65 fucking weapons. That's a lot to collect, and collecting all of them is some bullshit. In order to unlock a weapon, you need to satisfy some sort of condition. A lot of these are fairly standard, like clear this aerial free expedition under a certain amount of time, or maybe it's sitting on a part of a map, or you have to kill all the enemies in a certain area. Mostly straightforward tasks. Except that nowhere in the game does it tell you any of this. The game will tell you when a weapon spawns on the map to be picked up, but it will never tell you what you did to get it or how to get any of them. Like, there's this one called Spiked Wisdom where you're required to wait 20 minutes, which doesn't sound bad, but the mission takes way less time to finish, so you'll easily miss out on it. Or there's Sorrowborn, where you have to reach the other side of the map in under 2 minutes, which is not the most intuitive, as most people would just do the main objectives. But the most esoteric of all would be Treasure Builder. In this room, there's paintings on both sides of the walls, and you have to touch 4 of them in a specific order to get the weapon. There is no fucking way anyone would be able to find that on their own. This shit is so cryptic that I feel like this game doesn't actually want you to find them at all, almost telling you that you'd have to be the insane one to do this. Either that, or it was to sell more guides for the game, which was still common practice when the game came out. If you're up to the task of finding all the weapons, just do yourself a favor and look up a guide. You will not be able to figure this shit out yourself. In addition to getting access to Ending E, you also get access to a bunch of short stories tied to each weapon. Each weapon gets a story, but you only start with the first of 4 parts of that story when you unlock it. In order to unlock the remaining 3 parts, you have to level up the weapon to level 4. The requirement to level up each weapon is to kill a certain amount of enemies with it. To reach level 2, you're looking at a range from 150 to 200 kills, and to reach level 4, you're looking at 500 to 600 kills. This is per fucking weapon, mind you. Each weapon by itself is close to, if not 1,000 kills. And to unlock all the weapon stories, you have to do this shit 65 times. Which I did. Welcome to your new home of Chapter 1 Verse 2. Here you got access to the easiest 748 kills in this game, at least with the route I took. There's more than that on the map, but going to clear the whole map would end up taking more time than just resetting the map. The actual grind itself is one of the most tedious things in existence. Load up the map, run the same route, long for death, and upgrade 2, maybe 3 weapons if I'm lucky. The route becomes routine pretty quickly. I'd put something on to listen to and grind out the weapons for a bit, and doing this just amounts to having something to do with your hands. It's like a fucked up fidget toy after you become used to it. But each run of this map takes about 20-ish minutes per run. So over the 30 hours I've spent grinding the weapons, I've probably ran this map 90 or so times. And yeah, you heard right. 30 hours for this shit. It takes longer to get all the weapon stories than it does to beat the game. And yes, I know for a fact it took 30 hours because I recorded every second of the grind, and the video files total to 30 hours. There's zero exaggeration here. It's fucked up how long it takes. What makes it worse is when you're trying to level up a bad weapon because it just makes it feel way more of a slog. The maces are the fucking worst weapons to level, man. Low damage, slow as hell, lacks any range shit-ass magic, and when you hit enemies they bounce out of your range. This whole category of weapon has zero kill potential, and it just drags on the process of getting the weapon stories. All around, bad experience. And the game for some reason tracks the total amount of kills you have throughout the game. I hit level 69 and ended up getting a little over 78,000 kills. That's an insane number. May I never have to do this again for any reason. One neat detail that you get whenever you upgrade a weapon is that each weapon has 4 different models, one for each level. It's a subtle thing that they didn't need to add in, but it was always a nice little detail that I liked to see whenever I got to the level up screen and try to play spot the difference. A lot of the changes can be hard to notice, but others will be a lot more obvious, like a change in color to green like Slaughterism. So after suffering through the unlocking of the weapon stories, I could now enjoy the fruits of my labor and read through them. Most of the weapon stories are tragedies, either the personal nature of love lost or succumbing to madness, or more large-scale tragedies of kingdoms ruled by tyranny or being under attack by bandits or shit like that. There are some exceptions to this. Only a handful of weapons aren't tragic. 7 or so, give or take 2 or 3 depending on your definition of tragedy. Scald's Song, for example, focuses on a rivalry between 2 sisters as they fight over the same man, only for the guy to be like, "You can both be my wives." Based? A lot of these stories give context as to why a weapon is named the way it is or why they might have the magic that it does. One example is Seere's Companion, which tells the story of a warrior monk whose son dies in battle, after which the monk dies of the sorrow he feels from that. What gets me though is that a lot of the weapon stories will be like, "This shit is super cursed," or "Only the chosen are able to wield this," or with Definitely Not Dragon Slayer it says that it is too heavy for anyone to use. Like the Glorious Bane describes cursing the wielder with nightmares so bad they'll die from it, Moonfire which says that only those with the protection from the moon god can hold this. And yet Kaim can wield all of these weapons with no problem. Either Kaim is cracked, or a lot of these weapon stories are in-universe exaggerations or just folklore surrounding the weapon. The weapon stories are neat little rewards to get that adds a little bit extra to the weapons you like using the most. Do I recommend actively seeking out getting the weapon stories? Hell no. If you're that curious, you're on the internet right now, just look that shit up! Drakengard is the first game I ended up purchasing with the first money that I earned in my life, and it is not a decision that I regret at all. This was back in high school and when I was given an opportunity from one of my teachers to do some commission work for some organization and was offered money to do so. And this money was the exact amount I needed to get Drakengard. I loved Nier, which I had played at that point, and the PS2 era in general, and wanted to experience Drakengard for myself. If there's one action in my entire life that defines who I am the best, it is making Drakengard my first earned purchase. I feel that I need to clarify this. Everything I've said in this video is true and accurate, not just to the game itself, but also how I feel about it. The game is some ass, and I wouldn't recommend this game to anyone. But I do also feel that Drakengard is worth playing, and that I don't regret doing so. I've got a fucked up relationship with Drakengard. The game sucks to play most of the time. but I can't help but like it. I happily talk about this game, but I also can't in good conscience recommend anyone actually touch this game without certain qualifiers, such as a tolerance for undercooked games. It's not a game for everyone, that's for sure. But if you're able to look past all of Drakengard's rougher qualities, what you're left with is something unique, fascinating, and even fun at times. Drakengard was made back in a time where creators in bigger studios were a lot more experimental with what they were doing. Creatives like Yoko Taro and the rest of this dev team was given the opportunity and funding to make some weird shit, which describes nearly every aspect of this game. Which you still see weird shit still get made to an extent today, but even Yoko Taro has expressed the sentiment recently that there's less of that nowadays. There's less people making strange, interesting, and innovative games outside of the independent space. But that's what Drakengard is, and I think if you care about the medium at all, I think you owe it to yourself to try this game out.
La 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 la, la 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 la. Watchers dance! Such fun!
The Watchers dance. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. The Watchers, they dance.
The endings are got linearly. For example, you get ending A for finishing Chapter 8, after which you get prompted that there are more endings in the game and you now have access to Chapter 9. Ending A through D follows this structure, but not ending E. For ending E, you have to collect all 65 weapons in this game. Whereas ending D has Seere sacrificing himself, freezing the entire continent in time to stop the Watchers, this time sees Kaim and the dragon sacrifice themselves instead by diving into the Queen Beast. Doing so results in one of the most surreal, nightmarish cutscenes in this game. And that's saying a lot. I fucking love this cutscene's direction. The huge whiplash of cutting to modern-day Tokyo is insane, given how we spend the whole game in fantasy Europe. At the ass end of the game, you're suddenly hit with time shenanigans and alternate worlds that, apparently, it's possible to jump from one to another like Kaim and the Dragon does. But to really sell it, this cutscene is muted, not just in color, but in sound. Despite being the most familiar sight to the player in the whole game, seeing a city like this just feels so alien. But there is no time to get your bearing ever because now you're in a final boss fight. This fight, if you even want to call it that, feels like it was designed as a joke. Like Yoko Taro thought it'd be really funny to not have this play like anything else in the game and to instead blindside you with a rhythm game. It's a challenging rhythm game at that too. There's only 2 buttons, square for light rings and triangle for dark, and if you fuck up you get stunned for a bit. But it is possible to recover early on if you aren't about to get nailed by a ring coming at you. This starts off pretty easy, which leads you into a false sense of security, only to then start throwing in some mix-ups in the middle of this. But then this ends in a barrage of an actually challenging sequence. It's not easy to not only keep up with the rings coming at you, but to also keep count of the rings that are being spawned in as well as in what pattern. Even if you clear all of that, the game still throws a spare few rings of angelic text at you to catch you if you're sleeping. Do not be thrown off guard until the timer hits 0. But not everyone is good at rhythm games. I'm not, that's for sure. If you are having trouble, you can just pause the game. When you do, you can take your time to look at what's coming up next. What I would do is read the next 5 inputs, unpause and quickfire that shit, then quickly pause again. I'd recommend doing this so you don't waste hours on this sequence. With that, Kaim and the dragon get shot down by the JSDF and fucking die. That's how ending E ends. But after credits, you're given one last bonus challenge. There's a free expedition in Tokyo where you now have to fight 5 of those fighter jets, and man, they're a bitch to fight. They're fast as fuck, hard to hit, and are very aggressive. If you're not paying attention to the minimap being vigilant of any missile shot at you, you're going to eat hard shit quick. Weirdly enough, the highest ranked dragon you get, the Chaos form, is actually bad for this fight. The Chaos form's homing projectiles zigzag so they take longer to reach its target, so they can never catch up to the jets. Whereas the rank 3 dragon's homing shots follow a linear trajectory, so they're able to actually catch up. When you take down all 5, you unlock one last form of the dragon. You can just replace her with your very own fighter jet. It's a very funny reward seeing Kaim riding shotgun on the top of a jet flying around and shooting missiles in this fantasy land of Europe. The jet is fun to mess around with for a couple of minutes, but at this point there's nothing else to do in the game. I finished it. Completed it. Fucking done. Got all the weapons, the weapon stories, all the endings, and even the bonus at the end. With that, I've hit the end of Drakengard.
Crimson blood. Poison. Eternity. Revenge. 2. Sacrifice. Mother. Ritual. Scarlet. Prayers. Heresy. Hell. Solitude. Clouded sky. Madness. God of world. Adore us.